I'm in the big leagues, told him don't miss me. Ballin' like Houston, ayy, feeling like Whitney. I need a bag, bruh, send it through quickly. I'm making his dog, like I'm in the big leagues. Told him that I gotta go, dog. I'm riding a road, y'all. I think that I'm back in my bag now. So I need that go, y'all. Got hits when he throwing the fastball. Just too quick for it.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Another Turnover, the basketball podcast, where a basketball fan with zero basketball credibility gives his opinions on what's going on in the NBA. Opinions that nobody asked for. As always, I'm your host, Mr. Chris Aaron Murphy, a.k.a. Aaron. And ladies and gentlemen, let's just jump right into it. So, folks, this is going to be my January recap episode, recapping what has happened in the NBA over the past month, since January began, since the new year began. I was anticipating doing this on Tuesday and still having Friday show. I think I'm just going to make this the last Friday of the month and stick to Fridays. I think for my hectic schedule, Fridays are going to be the way I'm going to go moving forward. But let's talk about January. So let's talk about the season so far. This is basically kind of the third episode where I've done like a recap of the season so far, but I think I'll stick to doing these at the end of the month on the last Friday of the month. So let's talk about the season so far. Let's look at the records as they stand today, January 28th. So I'm going to go right into the Eastern Conference. So let's take a look. So right now, the number one ranked team in the Eastern Conference is the Miami Heat. The Miami Heat have kind of been up and down through the season. They've kind of dealt with some pretty significant injuries, but they're at 31-17 right now. So shout out to the Miami Heat for bouncing back from those injuries. Chicago Bulls dealing with some injuries as well. They are the second best team in the Eastern Conference with a record of 30-17, so only half a game back from the Miami Heat. I think they're still without Zach LaVine for an extended period. I don't know if he's back just yet. But they were the number one team for a minute, and kind of, with the injuries, kind of had, been through a slump recently, but still playing pretty good basketball. The third team in the Eastern Conference with a 30-19 record is the Cleveland Cavaliers. Like, I talked about them. They had a pretty good start to the season earlier this year. And I was like, they'll kind of have a fall from grace. But, we are, 49 games in? A third in the Eastern Conference is pretty incredible. So, shout out to them. They've got a really, really solid young core. Darius Garland has been playing well. Evan Mobley has been doing really well, too. Jarrett Allen has been playing great for them. So the Cleveland Cavaliers with the third best record in the Eastern Conference. I heard one of these, analysts, I think it was ESPN or Fox or one of the two, basically saying, they could come out of the Eastern Conference. And I was like, that's a bit of a stretch. I think that's a bit of a prisoner of the moment kind of thing. But Cleveland is playing well. It'll be interesting to see who they match up with come playoff time. But fourth seed in the Eastern Conference right now is the Brooklyn Nets, who are playing without Kevin Durant for the next 4 to 5 weeks, dealing with a knee strain. They have a 29-19 record. Now, Kyrie Irving, as we all know, is back. He's, mostly back, only playing road games. But Brooklyn Nets kind of struggled a bit recently, like I said, with the injury to Kevin Durant. James Harden has been kind of vocal about his frustrations with the team, thinking they should be number one. And arguably with Kyrie Irving and James Harden, even Kyrie Irving on a part-time basis, the talent they have, Brooklyn should probably be the number one seed in the East. But I'm not too worried about them. Once Kevin Durant comes back, they're going to be a matchup nightmare for pretty much any team. Philadelphia 76ers have the same record with the fifth spot, 29-19, playing, obviously, as we all know, without Ben Simmons for the year. Well, at least we think they're not going to play, like Ben Simmons isn't going to come back. I don't think he's going to get traded before the deadline, but that's a whole other story, and I don't want to talk about Ben Simmons right now. But the Philadelphia 76ers playing some pretty good basketball. Joel Embiid is actually playing really well over the past, I would say, few months. Has been healthy, has really carried this Philadelphia 76ers team. So shout out to them. The sixth seed in the Eastern Conference right now is the Milwaukee Bucks, the defending champions at 30-20. Another team that's been kind of riddled with injuries throughout, but I did see a crazy statistic that when their big three plays, their big three being Giannis Antetokounmpo, Drew Holiday, and Chris Middleton, they're 17-3. So their big three, if they're all healthy come playoff time, they're the defending champions for a reason. So it'll be interesting to see what ends up happening with the Milwaukee Bucks. I don't see them staying at that 6th seed for very much longer if they're all able to stay healthy. Now, seeds, as we all know, the playoff format has kind of changed in the NBA. So seeds 7 through 10 are play-in teams as of right now. So you want to finish, ideally want to finish 1 through 6 so you don't have to have a play-in game. But right now, these are the teams that would be in the play-in tournament based off record. So you have the Charlotte Hornets at 27 and 22. Had arguably surprised a lot of people. I think I had them as a play-in team, but I didn't think they would be at the 7th spot so far. Boston Celtics, who have kind of underachieved, they are 25 and 24. They are sitting at the 8th spot. Toronto Raptors, which no one really kind of expected too much, are 23 and 23 with the 9th spot. And then the 10th spot goes to the Washington Wizards at a 23 and 25 record. Now, remember when the Wizards were the number 1 team in the Eastern Conference, like kind of early on, it was about 14, 15 games in. Like I said, I definitely did not see that being sustainable. They're pretty much right arguably where I exceeded my expectations even at the 10th spot. I definitely did not have them in the playoffs, I don't believe. I'd have to go back and check my earlier episode. But I just don't see them sticking around because you have behind them, you have the Knicks and you have the Atlanta Hawks, who are better than their records are showing right now. They both kind of struggled, but I definitely see Washington falling a bit and either the Knicks or the Atlanta Hawks stepping into that potential play-in spot. But that's the Eastern Conference. Those are the teams that we've got records 1 through 10 that would be the potential playoff teams, aka or playoff as well as play-in teams. But let's look at the Western Conference. So the Phoenix Suns with a 38 and 9 record, winning 80% so far of their games, are the number 1 seed in the Western Conference. Now, I definitely saw the Phoenix Suns being really, really good again. I think I picked them to have the number 1 seed in my early season, way too early predictions. I know I had them, they're my finals pick. They were my finals pick in the beginning of the season, and based off what I've seen so far, they are, it's kind of a toss-up between them and Golden State, but I would give a slight edge to Phoenix as of right now. But they are playing some really, really good basketball. Devin Booker and Chris Paul definitely playing really, really well. Golden State Warriors, who have struggled a little bit recently, dealt with some injuries. Draymond Green's been out for an extended period, but they're still playing some pretty decent basketball, 36 and 13. Klay Thompson had his best game he has had so far last night, hitting 5 triples, if I'm not mistaken. So they are playing some pretty good basketball. Team that has definitely surpassed my expectations in the 3rd spot is the Memphis Grizzlies with a 33 and 17 record. Memphis, like I said multiple times, they got a team full of dogs. Ja Morant is definitely a leader on that team, but they've got Jaren Jackson, Dylan Brooks. They've got so many pieces on that team that can make them really formidable come playoff time. So they have definitely surprised me. Another team that I am normally not surprised by is the Utah Jazz. They have the 4th seed with a 30 and 19 record. I've talked about it multiple times. I'm just not impressed by the Utah Jazz team. I did see a report about the Utah Jazz, how Donovan Mitchell could potentially be looking to ask out of Utah. The headline, I didn't read the whole article, but the headline was basically like, they're basically a first-round exit away from him asking to be from somewhere else. So I don't know if you guys remember when COVID kind of hit and Rudy Gobert was kind of, one of the first, I think the first player that tested positive, and he kind of wasn't taking it seriously and all that stuff. There was concerns about some tension or irreparable damage between his relationship and Rudy Gobert. Now, I'm sure that's probably been fixed by now, at least I would think, because it's been nearly 2 years since that happened. But I definitely could see Donovan Mitchell wanting out of Utah. You're not going to get any big free agent signings to come to Utah. You can only do it through trades, but we'll see what happens. But I'm just not impressed by Utah. A team I am kind of impressed with in the 5th spot is the Dallas Mavericks after starting really, really slow to the year. They are 28 and 21. They have played really well. Luka Doncic has definitely stepped up his play so far to get them to that 5th seed. Denver Nuggets are in the 6th seed. They've kind of struggled. They're 26 and 21. They have definitely kind of struggled with injuries. So obviously injuries are a part of the game. So not really their fault, but I definitely see them not being a play-in team because I think once they get healthy, I think they'll be fine. Jokic is putting up MVP numbers still, like I talked about last week. But the play-in teams in the Western Conference, if the playoffs were to start today, play-in teams would be the LA Clippers at a 25 and 25 record, which is pretty impressive for the injuries to Paul George as well as Kawhi Leonard, who is speculated to come back. The latter speculated to come back earlier than anticipated, so he potentially could be ready to go for the playoffs, which would be pretty incredible. Paul George, I think, is still out with an elbow injury for an extended period of time, but it's not season ending. Team that has probably exceeded expectations, Minnesota Timberwolves, behind Anthony Edwards and Karl-Anthony Towns, two incredible young talents who have played really well. They have a 24-24 record, so right at 500, just like the Clippers are. The Los Angeles Lakers are in the 9th spot right now with a 24-25 record. Now, I'd be lying if I said that saying that didn't make me very, very happy, but the Lakers have definitely struggled. Obviously, Anthony Davis has been out for a while. He came back. He's been back for 2 games. I did see that he now has a wrist injury, so people were calling him street clothes online because that's what Charles Barkley's been calling him, which is kind of unfair because, I mean, injuries are part of the game, but you got to think, like, what kind of training regimens or, that he's doing to be injured, to be so young and be so injury prone. It's just like, it's kind of wild. But Lakers, they did lose their last game. I can't remember exactly who they lost to, but they're 24-25, so below 500, about 50 games in the season, which is not good at all. So, and then the 10th spot, the Portland Trailblazers are 20-28. I don't see well, I mean, I guess with CJ McCollum being back, they may be able to stay afloat in that 10th spot, but you have some pretty decent teams right behind them, including my San Antonio Spurs, which I'm hoping are able to creep up into that 10th spot, but we'll see what happens. But that is what you have for the Western Conference in terms of records. So transitioning a little bit, if the playoffs were to start today, I want to look at some of the potential matchups and kind of think, or kind of talk about what I think would happen in those potential matchups. So let's start again with the Eastern Conference. So right now, with Miami being the number 1 seed, they would play the 8th seed. Now, with the way the play-in tournament works, they would basically play the winner of the loser between the 7th and 8th and the 9 and 10 matchup. It's kind of weird. It's kind of hard to explain, but they would basically play the winner of the play-in tournament who gets the 8th seed. Basically the team that lost the 7-8 matchup would play the team that won the 9 and 10 matchup, and then they would play that person. Now, as far as Chicago, they're the 2nd seed, they would play the winner of Charlotte or Boston, because those are the 7 and 8 seeds right now, which Charlotte and Boston would be a pretty intriguing matchup. I probably would give I don't know. I want to give the slight edge to Boston, but they've been very inconsistent. So I wouldn't be surprised if Charlotte end up winning that matchup if, obviously, like I said, the playoffs were to start today. But the 3rd and the 6th matchup right now would be Cleveland and Milwaukee, which sucks for Cleveland because they've had such a great season. But playing the defending champions in the first round as of today would definitely not be good, especially if the big 3 in Milwaukee is healthy and ready to go. That wouldn't be great for Cleveland. I think Milwaukee would end up taking that matchup. And then Brooklyn and Philadelphia are the 4 and the 5 matchups. So they would end up playing each other in the first round, which definitely is not a first round matchup either, just because those are 2 powerhouse Eastern Conference teams. I mean, everybody healthy, ready to go. I would give the edge to Brooklyn because obviously there's no Ben Simmons. At least we believe there's going to be no Ben Simmons for Philadelphia. So I'd give the edge to Brooklyn winning that matchup in the first round, which would kind of suck, for the Philadelphia 76ers because, like I said, they've had a pretty decent season despite everything that's gone on with them. But the Western Conference, if the playoffs were to start today, let's take a look. So Phoenix Suns being the number one seed, like I said, they basically play the winner of the 9-10 matchup versus the loser of the 7-8 matchup. Whoever that would be, that either be the Clippers, Minnesota, the Lakers, or Portland Trailblazers. Right now, the Golden State Warriors with the 2nd spot would end up playing either the Clippers or the Minnesota Timberwolves, which Golden State could beat either one of those teams. So I definitely would see them advancing in that particular matchup. Now, if Kawhi Leonard and Paul George are able to come back 100% in the playoffs and they ended up playing them in the first round, that would be a pretty interesting first round matchup. I still think the Golden State Warriors would end up beating them, but with Ty Lue coaching and the way, his schemes and everything like that, he's familiar with that Golden State team. that would be a pretty intriguing matchup. I wouldn't be surprised if that went like 6 or 7 if the Clippers were healthy, but I still would give the edge to Golden State. A pretty good first round matchup, Memphis and Denver in the 3 and 6 spot if the playoffs were to start today. That would be pretty intriguing. I would definitely give a slight edge to Memphis as of right now, but that's mainly because Denver is not healthy. I mean, I don't think Memphis has any really defensive answers for Jokic because he does so much. But that would be interesting. That would be an interesting matchup, and I'd give a slight edge to Memphis. And then the 4-5 matchup, Utah and Dallas. I definitely think this would be the potential first round matchup that Dallas could win. I know the past couple of years they lost to the Clippers in the first round, but I would give a slight edge to Dallas beating Utah in the first round. So that's all contingent on if the playoffs were to start today, which obviously they don't start for another couple months. But some of the matchups are shaping up to be pretty interesting. Like, we're about 50 games in. At this point, we kind of have a good idea of who's going to make the playoffs, unless one team goes on a pretty good streak or one team goes on a pretty bad losing streak. We got a good idea of what we're going to see in the playoffs. At least those first 4 or 5 seeds are more than likely going to stay there. But let's talk about January some more in terms of record. So I want to take a look at who has had the best record so far. Shout out to website StatMuse. They got incredible statistics that I was able to go off of. But let's look at the best record of January so far. Now, the Phoenix Suns, obviously, hold the best record for January with an 11-1 record. They've had some pretty incredible wins over Charlotte. They've beaten Dallas, who has been streaking recently. And they've beaten Utah twice. So some pretty good teams that they have won over. But the second best record in January goes to the Dallas Mavericks with an 11-3 record. So won as many games, but lost a few more games as they played a bit more than the Phoenix Suns. They've got wins over Denver. They've got wins over Golden State, Chicago, and Memphis 2 times in the month of January. So Dallas has definitely played really, really well so far in the month of January. Now, there's 3 teams that are tied in terms of record for January that are 10-3. So I want to talk about all 3. I want to give them some love. Philadelphia 76ers wins over Brooklyn, Boston, Miami, and the LA Lakers. So the Philadelphia 76ers have played really well, like I said, despite everything and all the drama that's gone surrounding their team. The Cleveland Cavaliers that we talked about already, 3rd seed in the Eastern Conference, has beaten Utah, has beaten Brooklyn, has beaten the New York Knicks, and has also beaten the Milwaukee Bucks. So Cleveland, I can't say that they're at this point, 50 games in, I can't be like, oh yeah, this will fall off. This is a large sample size of teams that they've beaten. So, excuse me. So Cleveland has played really well. And then Memphis has wins against Brooklyn, Cleveland, the Lakers, Golden State, Chicago, Denver, all in the month of January. So Memphis is going to be dangerous come playoff time. I am really looking forward to see who they match up with in that first round, because beating all those teams in the regular season, obviously, some of the teams have dealt with injuries. They beat Brooklyn without Kevin Durant, which, totally fine. But those are some big-time wins against some winning teams. So shout out to them. But now let's talk about who has played the best or had the best averages so far in January. So January so far, let's look at 3 players that I kind of wanted to highlight. So Giannis and Tokunpo has been a monster the entire month of January. Take a look at his statistics so far. 11 games in January. He has 31.1 points per game, averaging 10.7 rebounds and 6.5 assists per game. So if you blindly look at those stats, you're like, oh yeah, those are MVP caliber numbers. And obviously we know, Jokic is the reigning MVP, but Giannis was the back-to-back MVP as well as Defensive Player of the Year 2 seasons ago, if I'm not mistaken. So he has played really well. He definitely is in the running for MVP as of right now. And nobody else in terms of points per game came close at all. But second best player, or second best averages, Bradley Beal, averaging 23.8 points per game for the month of January, 5 rebounds per game, as well as 7.9, almost 8 assists. So shout out to Bradley Beal. Played well. He has played well. Unfortunately, the Wizards have not. So, and then let's talk about Steph Curry with 13 games in the month of January. Not averaging as much as we are accustomed, but 21.2 points per game, 5.8 rebounds per game. I've always been astounded by the way that Steph Curry is able to rebound better than a lot of forwards in the NBA. He is definitely a really good rebounding guard. 5.8 rebounds per game, as well as 7.1 assists. So those have been the best player averages for the month of January. Giannis so far miles ahead of the pack in the month of January, and definitely got to be 1 or 2 in your book for MVP considerations. But let's transition a little bit. Last week, I talked about the All-Stars and who I wanted to be on the team. And yesterday, Thursday, you're listening to this today on Friday, they announced the All-Star starters for the 2022 NBA All-Star Game. So let's talk about what I kind of got right, and let's talk about what I got wrong. So let's start in the Western Conference. Let's talk about LeBron James being the leading vote getter for the NBA as a whole, so he's going to be the captain. Nikola Jokic making the team. Andrew Wiggins, let me repeat, Andrew Wiggins is going to be a starter this year. Then you have Steph Curry and Ja Morant making up your guard pairing for starters. So most of the picks, I got most of the Western Conference right. I did pick PG-13, Paul George, to be a starter, even though he is injured right now. But Andrew Wiggins is going to be a starter. So pretty incredible. Now, all kidding aside, he has had a pretty good season, a pretty solid season so far. Definitely didn't think it was all-star caliber, all-star worthy in my opinion. But when you're not the focal point of the offense, like Andrew Wiggins is not, he's their third, fourth, fifth, maybe best player. You can make the argument that Jordan Poole is, a little bit nicer than he is. When you're not the focal point of the offense, you can put up some numbers. So, but no disrespect to Andrew Wiggins, he's had a great season. All-star starter for the first time, all-star in general for the first time. So shout out to Andrew Wiggins. But in the Eastern Conference, let's talk. Got most of these right as well, excluding one. So Kevin Durant is going to be the captain, again, for the second straight season. You have Giannis and Tokunpo. You have Joel Embiid. You have Trae Young, who will be a starter. And then DeMar DeRozan. So again, 4 out of 5 picks that I had for the All-Star game for starters. I definitely would have given the edge to Zach LaVine over Trae Young. Trae Young, I did pick him to be an all-star. I just definitely didn't see him being a starter. I think Zach LaVine overall has had a better season than he has, but I'm sure Zach LaVine, at least I hope Zach LaVine will end up being on the team as well. Now, in terms of starters, kind of sucks that Phoenix doesn't have a starter for this year's All-Star game with the best record. You could have made, John Morant has just been playing out of this world, but Devin Booker has had a really good season so far too. If Devin Booker ended up getting the start over John Morant, I wouldn't really be too upset over that. But Chris Paul has had a really, really good season too. So I definitely think Chris Paul and Devin Booker will end up making the All-Star team. It's just kind of sucks with them having the best record, winning 80% of their games. They don't have a starter. But the coaches pick the reserves, so we'll find out the reserves here in the next couple weeks. Coaches will make up the rest of the team. I am just praying that DeJounte Murray ends up making the team. He is, averaging 19, 9, and 8. He has had a really, really solid season. Second, 10 triple-doubles this year. Second in triple-doubles, only behind Jokic, who was the reigning MVP. So, I really hope DeJounte Murray makes the team. I am just praying that, I know the San Antonio Spurs haven't played well, but I'm just hoping that he makes the team. But let's transition again. Let's talk about, let's go around the association, stories and news that has come out this week for the NBA. Not a whole lot, only one story that I want to talk about that came out yesterday, which is pretty incredible. Golden State Warriors' Draymond Green is going to be an analyst and work for TNT as an active player. So I pulled an ESPN article here from the, Associated Press via ESPN. Golden State Warrior star has received an exclusive multi-year agreement to join Turner Sports as an active player, set to make appearances with the networks inside the NBA program, among other content opportunities with Turner Sports and Bleacher Report, which is pretty great. This is the first deal of its kind. Most players, they'll end up, not most, but a lot of players will end up going to TV after they're done playing. But Draymond Green will be sitting alongside Ernie Johnson, Charles Barkley, Shaquille O'Neal, and Kenny Smith as analysts when his schedule allows. And he's also going to be working remotely with various other programs and special projects throughout the season. So this is pretty incredible. A quote from the article a quote directly from TNT about the announcement says, "I've had amazing experience working with Turner Sports." This is Draymond Green. in recent years, and I'm a big believer in the way they entertain and genuinely connect with fans on all levels. Today's announcement helps to formalize our relationship, and I couldn't be prouder to officially be a part of the TNT family. So this is pretty neat. We've already kind of seen analysts from the WNBA working for ESPN while they are playing, like Chiney Ogwumike. She does a really, really phenomenal job. But she also, in the WNBA, Candace Parker as well, working for Turner. But this kind of deal for an active NBA player we hadn't seen. So this is pretty cool. I definitely am. The chemistry that Draymond Green has with the rest of the incredible chemistry of the inside the NBA guys is pretty cool. So I'm looking forward to see some of the TV moments that end up happening from this signing. So shout out to Draymond Green. But last thing that I want to talk about for today's episode, I want to recap the marquee matchups from last week. So if you remember, we had the Bulls and the Bucks, we had the Pacers and the Suns, and the Memphis Grizzlies and the Dallas Mavericks taking on each other in head-to-head matchups for the weekend. So I was able to go 2 for 3. I had the Bucks beating the Bulls, the Suns beating the Pacers. I did pick the Memphis Grizzlies to beat the Dallas Mavericks on the road, which Dallas Mavericks ended up pulling out that game pretty convincingly. So that brought my season record to 15-9. So 15-9, I mean, out of 24 games, not too bad. I'll take it. But this week's game, so tonight, we have a pretty nice Eastern Conference game. We've got Boston Celtics taking on the Atlanta Hawks. Tomorrow, Saturday's game, we've got the Brooklyn Nets and the Golden State Warriors. That definitely should be a pretty good one. Kyrie, coming back to Oracle after all this time. And then you've got Sunday's game, the Denver Nuggets and the Milwaukee Bucks, two powerhouses in their respective conferences. So I am going to pick the Celtics on the road to beat the Atlanta Hawks. I definitely am. Everybody knows, I'm biased toward the Celtics. They're my second favorite team, my Eastern Conference team, even though they have struggled. I'm going to pick the Golden State Warriors at home to beat the Brooklyn Nets. Obviously, there's no Kevin Durant, but they still got Kyrie and James Harden, but I'm definitely going to give the edge to the Golden State Warriors, especially with Klay Thompson being back. And then the Bucks, I'm going to take over the Denver Nuggets at home as well. So 1 road team, 2 home teams is what I am expecting for this weekend. But ladies and gentlemen, that is all the show I have for you folks today. As I always say, if you are watching on YouTube, subscribe, like, comment, all that good stuff. If you are listening, either Spotify or Apple Podcasts, if you could like the podcast, follow the podcast, rate, leave comments, all that good stuff, I would greatly appreciate it. It's going to be an exciting few weeks here with the NBA All-Star Game coming up in the next couple weeks, and an exciting weekend for hoops action as well. But I want to give the NFL some love too. It is championship weekend, so all my listeners who are also NFL fans, should be pretty exciting. I definitely think the Chiefs are going to take it all the way. I don't know a whole lot about football, but that's what I'm going with. So I hope you have a wonderful weekend. I hope you get to do all the things you want to do. Stay safe, and I will see you next week. Take care.
Yeah, I told him I'ma hit it out of stands. I deserve another 100 bands. I deserve another 100 fans. Told them this was always in the plans. I just did it cause they said I can. Blowing euros when I'm down in France. Labels asking how I build a brand. Told them put a check up in my hands. Still got time, no cap. Made a few checks, but they all in the rest. Had a few friends, but they stuck in the past. I don't even trip when I'm thinking about that. Hopped in the whip and we all in black. Shawty wanna ride